Hello, and welcome back to Friday Reads, where we help you find your next read. I'm Jill.
And I'm Julie. And last week, if you watched, you know we had a lot of fun picking books that took place in the 1920s. So we're jumping forward a few decades, and today we're talking about books that take place in the 1950s. So when I think 1950s, I think the Korean War, rock and roll. I looked up and it said it was the first time Swanson came out with their aluminum tray TV dinners.
Wow.
Alaska and Hawaii became states. So I'm curious what topics are going to be in our books. So Jill, what's your first pick for the 1950s?
So my first one is called The Swans of Fifth Avenue by Melanie Benjamin. From New York Times bestselling author of The Aviator's Wife comes an enthralling novel about Truman Capote's scandalous, headline-making, and heart-wrenching friendship with Babe Pauley in New York society swans in the 1950s. Centered on two dynamic, complicated, and compelling protagonists, Truman Capote and Babe Paley, this book is steeped in the glamour and perfumed and smoky atmosphere of New York's high society. Babe Paley, known for her high-profile marriage to CBS founder William Paley and her ranking in the International Best Dressed Hall of Fame, was one of the reigning monarchs of the New York's high society in the 1950s. Replete with gossip, scandal, betrayal, and a vibrant cast of real-life supporting characters, readers will be seduced by the startling look at the infamous society of swans. So if you want to go to high society New York, this is the one for you.
My first pick is by an author that we've talked about a few times, Ruta Sepetys. Jilza has her t-shirt on. This is The Fountains of Silence, which was published in 2019. It's a portrait of love, silence, and secrets under a Spanish dictatorship. This takes place in Madrid, 1957. Under the fascist dictatorship of General Francisco Franco, Spain is hiding a dark secret. Meanwhile, tourists and foreign businessmen flood into Spain under the welcoming promise of sunshine and wine, and among them is 18-year-old Daniel Matheson, the son of an oil tycoon who arrives in Madrid with his parents, hoping to connect with the country of his mother's birth through the lens of his camera. Photography and fate introduce him to Ana, whose family's interweaving obstacles reveal the lingering grasp of the Spanish Civil War, as well as chilling definitions of fortune and fear. Daniel's photographs leave him with uncomfortable questions amidst shadows of danger. He's backed into a corner of difficult decisions to protect those he loves. Lives and hearts collide, revealing an incredibly dark side to the sunny Spanish city. This book also includes vintage media reports, oral history commentary, photos, and more. So this is on my list of books to be read. It got a 4.31 on Goodreads. Loved her other books that I have read. So check out Ruta Sepetys, The Fountains of Silence. She does so much research into her books. They're amazing.
You really get back to that time period when she's there. So when I think of the 1950s, I think of, like, housewives, like Beaver. I don't even know if Leave It to Beaver is the right decade, but, you know.
I Love Lucy premiered in the 50s.
So this is the recipe for the perfect wife by Karma Brown. In this captivating dual narrative novel, a modern-day woman finds inspiration in hidden notes left by her home's previous owner, a quintessential 1950s housewife. As she discovers remarkable parallels between this woman's life and her own, it causes her to question the foundation of her own relationship with her husband and what it means to be a wife fighting for her place in a patriarchal society. When Alice Hale leaves her career in publicity to become a writer and follows her husband to the New York suburbs, we're going to New York again, she is unaccustomed to filling her days alone with a big empty house. But when she finds a vintage cookbook buried in a box in the home's basement, she becomes captivated by the cookbook's previous owner, 1950s housewife Nellie Murdoch. As Alice cooks her way through the past, she realizes that within the cookbook's pages, Nellie left clues about her life, including a mysterious series of unsent letters penned to her mother. Soon Alice learns that while baked Alaska and meatloaf 5 ways may seem harmless, Nellie's secrets may have been anything but. When Alice uncovers a more sinister, even dangerous side to Nellie's marriage and has become increasingly dissatisfied with the mounting pressures of her own relationship, she begins to take control of her life and protect herself with a few secrets of her own. So, recipe for a perfect wife.
Love the title. My second pick is The Invitation by Lucy Foley. This was published back in 2016. This takes place in Rome, 1953. Hal, a journalist, flailing in the post-war darkness, has come to the Eternal City to lose himself and to seek absolution for the thing that haunts him. One evening, he finds himself on the steps of a palazzo, walking into a world of privilege and light. Here on a rooftop above the city, he meets the mysterious Stella. Hal and Stella are from different worlds, but their connection is magnetic. Together, they escape the crowded party and imagine a different life, even if it's just for a night. Yet Stella vanishes all too quickly, and Hal is certain their paths will not cross again. But a year later, they are unexpectedly thrown together. After Hal receives an invitation he can't resist. An Italian Contessa asks him to assist on a trip of a lifetime, acting as a reporter on a tremendous yacht, skimming its way along the Italian coast toward the Cannes Film Festival. The most famous artists and movie stars of the day are all being gathered to promote a new film. This book is described as an evocative love story set along the Italian Riviera about a group of charismatic stars who all have secrets and pasts they try desperately and dangerously to hide. So check out The Invitation by Lucy Foley.
In the Italian Riviera.
Sounds glamorous.
Yes, it sure does. The next one is called The Last Bathing Beauty by Amy Sue Nathan. A former beauty queen faces the secrets of her past for herself and the sake of her family's future. Everything seemed possible in the summer of 1951. Back then, Betty Stern was an 18-year-old knockout working at her grandparents' lakeside resort, the Catskills of the Midwest. Was the perfect place for Betty to prepare for bigger things. She'd heard she'd head to college in New York City. New York City again, all of mine are... Her career as a fashion editor would flourish, but first she'd enjoy a wondrous last summer at the beach, falling deeply in love with an irresistible college boy and competing in the annual Miss South Haven pageant. On the precipice of a well-planned life, Betty's future was limitless. Decades later, the choices of that long-ago season still reverberate for Betty, now known as Boop. Especially when her granddaughter comes with her dilemma that echoes Boop's memories of her first love, broken hearts, and faraway dreams. It's time to finally face the past for the sake of her family and her own happiness. Maybe in reconciling the life she once imagined with the life she's lived, Boop will discover it's never too late for a second chance. I wonder if they meant to have the Betty Boop thing in there.
Maybe.
I don't know. Is this Betty Boop? You'll have to read it and find out.
My third pick is The Stationery Shop. I have the large print edition up, so there might be a different cover for this one in the regular print. This is by Marjan Kamali. This was published in 2019. A poignant, heartfelt novel about the award-nominated author of Together Tea. In this story, Roya, a dreamy, idealistic teenager, is living amid the political upheaval of 1953 Tehran. They find a literary oasis in kindly Mr. Fakhri's neighborhood stationery shop, stocked with books and pens and bottles of jewel-colored ink. Then Mr. Fakhri, with a keen instinct for a budding romance, introduces Roya to his other favorite customer, handsome Bahman, who has a burning passion for justice and love for Rumi's poetry, and she loses her heart all at once. The romance blossoms, and the little stationery shop remains their favorite place in all of Tehran. A few short months later, on the eve of their marriage, Roya agrees to meet Bahman at the town square, but violence erupts, a result of the coup that forever changes their country's future. In the chaos, he never shows. For weeks, Roya tries desperately to contact him, but her efforts are fruitless. With a sorrowful heart, she moves on. She moves to California for college, to another man, to a life in New England, until more than 60 years later, an accident of fate leads her back to Bahman and offers her a chance to ask him the questions that have haunted her for more than half a century. Why did you leave? Where did you go? How is it that you were able to forget me? So this got very good reviews. This was a 4.22 on Goodreads. So check out The Stationery Shop.
So my next one is by Ivan Doig, Last Bus to Wisdom. This is number 12 in a series of the Two Medicine Country. I don't believe you need to read all of them. The first one was published in the 80s, and this one was published in 2015. Last Bus to Freedom. Donald Cameron is being raised by his grandmother, the cook at the legendary W Ranch in Ivan Doig's beloved Two Medicine Country of the Montana Rockies. So we're in Montana. A landscape that gives full rein to an 11-year-old's imagination. But when Graham has to have surgery for female trouble in the summer of 1951, all she can think to do is to ship Donal off to her sister in faraway Manitowoc, Wisconsin. So they go from... They're coming a little close to home here. There, Denal is in for a rude surprise, and Kate, bossy, opinionated, argumentative, and tyrannical, is nothing like her sister. She henpecks her good-natured husband, Herman the German, and Denal cannot seem to get past on her good side either. After one contretemps too many, Kate packs him back to the authorities in Montana on the Great Greyhound. But as it turns out, Denal isn't traveling solo. Herman the German has decided to fly the coop with him. In the immortal American tradition, the pair light out of the territory together, meeting a classic doyen ensemble of characters and having a rollicking misadventures along the way. The last bust of wisdom there. Leaving Wisconsin to go back to Montana. And he takes the husband with him. I love it.
My fourth pick is Fiona Davis's debut novel, and it is The Dollhouse, and this was published back in 2016, and this takes place in the 1950s in New York City.
New York again.
How about that? At the glamorous Barbizon Hotel for Women, where in the 1950s a generation of aspiring models, secretaries, and editors lived side by side while attempting to claw their way to fairy tale success, and where a present-day journalist becomes consumed with uncovering a dark secret buried deep within the Barbizon's glitzy past. When she arrives at the famed Barbizon Hotel in 1952, secretarial school enrollment in hand, Darby McLaughlin is everything her modeling agency hallmates are. She's plain, self-conscious, homesick, and utterly convinced she doesn't belong here, a notion the models do nothing to disabuse. Yet when Darby befriends Esme, a Barbizon maid, she's introduced to an entirely new side of New York City. Seedy downtown jazz clubs, where the music is as addictive as the heroin that's used there, and the startling sounds of bebop and even the possibility of romance. Over half a century later, the Barbizon's gone condo, and most of its long-ago guests are forgotten. But rumors of Darby's involvement in a deadly skirmish with a hotel maid back in 1952 haunt the halls of the building as surely as the melancholy music that floats from the elderly woman's rent-controlled apartment. It's a combination too intoxicating for journalist Rose Lewin, Darby's upstairs neighbor, to resist, not to mention the perfect distraction from her own imploding personal life. Yet as Rose's obsession deepens, the ethics of her investigation become increasingly murky, and neither woman will remain unchanged when the final, shocking truth is revealed. So this sounded like a good one. The Dollhouse by Fiona Davis, her debut novel.
Debut, I love debuts. So I think we had this one before, or at least we've had this author before, but maybe that's a sign that you should read it. The Lincoln Highway by Amor Tolls. This is the author of Gentlemen in Moscow and Rules of Civility. And this one takes us to 1950s America. In June 1954, 18-year-old Emmett Watson is driven home to Nebraska by the warden from the work farm where he just served a year for involuntary manslaughter. His mother long gone, his father recently deceased, and the family farm foreclosed upon by the bank, Emmett's intention is to pick up his 8-year-old brother and head west where they can start their lives anew. But when the warden drives away, Emmett discovers that two friends from the work farm have hidden themselves in the trunk of the warden's car. Together they have hatched an altogether different plan for Emmett's future. Spans just 10 days. This book spans just 10 days and is told from multiple points of view, probably from these different people hiding in the car. Mm-hmm. This is his third novel, and the styling will provide them with a new array and richly imagined settings, characters, and themes. So, 1950s with a bunch of people leaving a work camp.
That's on my list of books to be read, too. I read his first two, but haven't gotten to that one yet.
He's popular.
I like his writing style. My last pick is Meet Me in Monaco, a novel of Grace Kelly's Royal Wedding by Hazel Gaynor. This was published back in 2019. It's set in the 1950s against the backdrop of Grace Kelly's whirlwind romance and glamorous wedding to Prince Rainier of Monaco. Hazel Gaynor and Heather Webb take the reader on an evocative, sun-drenched journey in this page-turning novel of passion, fate, and second chances. Movie stars and paparazzi flock to Cannes for the glamorous film fest, but Grace Kelly, the biggest star of all, wants only to escape from those flashbulbs. When struggling perfumer Sophie Duval shelters Miss Kelly in her boutique, fending off a persistent British press photographer, a bond is forged between the two women and sets in motion a chain of events that stretches across 30 years of friendship, love, and tragedy. This photographer, James Henderson, cannot forget his brief encounter with Sophie Duval. Despite his guilt at being away from his daughter, he takes an assignment to cover the wedding of the century, sailing with Grace Kelly's wedding party on the SS Constitution from New York. That's quite an opportunity. In Monaco, as wedding fever soars and passions and tempers escalate, James and Sophie, like Princess Grace, must ultimately decide what they are prepared to give up for love. So, if you're interested in that period in history, check out Meet Me in Monaco.
Well, we hope we helped you find something to read if you want to take a trip back to the 1950s.
Like, comment, share. We always like to hear from you. If you've read a good book that takes place in the 1950s, we'd love to hear about it. Follow us on Facebook. Follow us on our YouTube channel. And until next time, we thank you for watching.
Bye.
Bye-bye.